Hi, my name's Danny, welcome to MABRIK, and today we're going to be showing you what's inside the new 10th edition Leviathan box set. We'll also go through some of the new changes that 10th edition has brought in compared to the old 9th edition. Alright, so let's have a look. So to start with, you've got some nice artwork, then we get to the sprues. They're all nicely individualized from what I can see here. So you have some of the Tyranid big bugs, the Space Marine Dreadnought. This is the new Tyranid Psychophage, the Terminator Captain, some of the smaller units for both the Tyranids and the Space Marines. And you got a lot in this box, there's a lot of sprues here. Now after that, now we get down to the meat and potatoes of this box. So I'll remove the protective cover. And then here, you see we have the new rulebook with the new guide. So this here is the building guide. It gives you a step-by-step guide of how to build all the miniatures. They are mostly, from what I can see, mostly monopose, but there are some different options that you can change a few things if you want to. So fairly easy guides to do. Everything, of course, in this box is push fit, so you don't need glue to put them together. You can just snap them all together. And then, of course, the main part we have here is the new rulebook. This is the new core rulebook with the Leviathan box theme to it. Next week you'll also be able to buy the actual core rulebook, which will be available on our website to pre-order. There's a lot of lore, artwork involved in this, so anyone who's a fan of the lore, there's plenty to get your teeth into, seeing how that's changed from the old Indomitus box set and how they progressed the story. They give you basically an overview of the 40k universe as it is right now, the different armies of the universe. Okay, and then we get to the core rules. And as you can see, there's a fair chunk of lore in this book. So with the core rules, it's all nicely set out for you, shows you the different phases, the command phase, movement phase, shooting phase, charge phase, and fight phase. So it's very much a step-by-step guide of how to play Warhammer 40k. And then it goes through each of the different phases, how they work, what you do in them. Then there's like weapon abilities, what all the different weapons are and what they can do, and what all the special rules for all the special weapons can do. Strategic reserves and how they work, how terrain works, step-by-step guide of how you classify terrain. But then new rules for the new set called Combat Patrol, and how it works here, just using a standard combat patrol that Games Workshop provide. And then we get into the other bit at the back here, which is all of the artwork, so armies painted by Games Workshop themselves. So seeing how the new stuff stacks up. It's always very nice to look at the artwork and the nice dioramas that they create. Then we get into the last part for all the people who like the narrative style, which is the Crusade rules. So with the Crusade rules, this is where you can basically make a narrative campaign that you can follow through step by step. This is the special one for the Leviathan box set, the Tyrannic War. So basically how to play these two armies against each other in a kind of campaign mission style, and then all the rules that go with it. And that's basically this book in a nutshell. Then if we continue on here, there's some additional stuff in here for us. We have a special token here that you can use with every box that you buy, where you can register it online, and you have a chance of winning some cool stuff from Games Workshop if they select you. There's also the major transfer sheet with all the main kind of factions on it from the Space Marine chapters. So you can also use your favorite faction, or you can just go it yourself. The objective deck. So this is for how you run your missions and stuff for the Tyrannic War, some stratagems and key powers you can use, all available in card form. And lastly, all the bases that you need to build your miniatures. So that's basically this box set in a nutshell. It all puts the Space Marines against the Tyranids, two factions that I do enjoy myself, being both a Tyranid player and a Space Wolf player. So I'm looking forward to building these miniatures and adding them to my own army collection. All right, so we're going to get into some of the fun part of the hobby, which is building the miniatures, which of course I do like myself. We're going to build one of these new Screamer Killers, which is kind of an homage to the back in the old school type of look that the old Screamer Killers used to have, rather than the new ones that the new Carnifexes currently have. Some of the big changes that I've read through so far. Battle Shock is now very different than it used to be. They used to do Battle Shock in the end of the turn. However, now it's done in the actual command phase. And of course, Battle Shock works a little differently than it used to as well. Rather than just having to take a leadership check, now it's a 2d6 roll. and you have to, from the 2d6, you just have to be able to beat your leadership. But now there aren't the problems of losing models if you fail leadership. However, there are now 3 big penalties that come into effect if you do lose, basically if you are now in battle shock, as they call it. The 3 key reasons for being in battle shock that take into effect. So you cannot have stratagems used upon the units that are in battle shock. They don't count as controlling any objectives if they are actually sitting on them. You can get out of this battle shock problem by using the universal stratagem, which costs 1 command point, of insane bravery, which basically will cancel out that battle shock, and then you can use the unit as normal, especially if you wanted to, take an objective or have that unit use another stratagem to make them better. Another key item that's shown up is, rather than only gaining 1 command point at the beginning of your command phase, both players now gain a command point at the beginning of each command phase, both yours and your opponent's. So in the movement phase, there's now some things that have changed there too. Before, you couldn't move through your own units. Now they've changed this, that friendly models can move through their own units except for vehicles or monsters. Vehicles and monsters still cannot move through other vehicles and monsters. During the shooting phase, they've made a few small changes, whereas now if you are a vehicle or a monster and you're tied up in combat, you can now shoot in combat. You can now also shoot out of combat. Also, on the other hand, you can now also be shot at by other units, even if you are in combat. However, there is a -1 penalty to be shooting at you. So this is a nice change, where vehicles used to get tied up, they couldn't really do a lot. Now they have a little bit more freedom of motion and movement, and they can actually still shoot and do some damage to your opponent, even if they're tied up in combat by another unit. If in the shooting phase, the unit decides that it wants to fall back rather than being stuck in combat, because maybe they're better at shooting than they are in combat, there is now a new rule for this, which is called Desperate Escape. The Desperate Escape rule means that you have to roll a dice for each model trying to escape this way. If you roll a 1 or a 2 on the dice roll, the model is destroyed, as basically they get hacked down. Characters now can actually join units. Before, each model was separate. Now, as a character, you can actually be part of a unit, which can also help with the bravery checks, as you now can use the HQs and the characters' leadership rather than your own, which actually makes it a lot easier to pass leadership checks. They've also made a small change with leadership now, that it's not the highest values anymore that characters have. They now have lower values, because you need to be able to roll higher than your leadership. So they've made the characters have lower leadership numbers that they have to roll on 2d6. There are some exceptions to this. The Tyranids have a special rule for this actually right now, where they get to roll 3d6 and then take away the lowest number. So they have a little bit more advantage and make it easier for them to pass leadership checks. There's also another rule that they've brought in called the Lone Operative. This applies to, you'll see it in the data sheets, for things like the Vindicare Assassin. So if you are more than 12 inches away from this model that has this special Lone Operative rule, you cannot shoot them. It's kind of a cool thing that small units can now not be targeted so easily if they're left out in the open from models that are far away with massive damaging weapons. All in all, I think what they've done so far is some better changes. It's going to help with better flow of the game. Certainly looking forward to see how the new points changes and the way the armies now interact with each other work better than they did in 9th edition or not. So I'm looking forward to getting my models on the table and actually playing out a game and see how they work. We're also going to be hosting a how to play event specifically for 10th edition for all of you newer players, and also the veterans who want to maybe get into 10th edition but haven't seen the new rules yet and would like to have a game and learn how the game is actually played. More information will be available on both our Facebook page and our website in due time. Thank you for listening.